When you are the system engineer and the designer, you have got to think about all the different phases that your hardware is going to be used in as you are doing your design. And you need those folks from those different phases of the life cycle, the ground ops guys, the mission op guys, the production guys. You need all of them with you as part of your team so that they can all give you input and understand the way that you're designing this, that they can actually produce it. They can operate it on the ground. They can operate it during flight, so that you've got a good design. And that's how infusing operability in early makes huge differences later on. It may cost you a little bit up front getting that team in there, but it makes huge gains later on when you're trying to actually go and operate this, past the design phase there. So one of the examples was when they were designing these interfaces, they were designing them to be assembled, but it was what if for some reason we had to disassemble it? And so I know in one of the meetings we brought that up, and so we had to think about that consideration of, of course, we're always thinking success-oriented and that we're not going to have to disassemble it, and we didn't have to. But still, how are you going to go and do that type of work in case that situation arises? And so you got to think about operability throughout, and operability of the whole system and all the phases as when you're designing, and that requires you getting all those, the different folks in up early and getting them all parts of the IPT, and being all members of the, of that IPT and thinking about that design, because you've got all the different perspectives coming in early. And so that would be my lesson for that one.
Getting everybody involved early on is desirable. In this case, the ground operations. We did have several of them fly up to Langley and visit and observe some of our critical lifts, see the hardware that they would be working with once it got down to Kennedy, and see some of the ground support equipment that we'd be shipping. A lot of this helped, some of it was even earlier, was to help us guide how to design and be able to plan the logistics of the use of this. We teamed with Kennedy, and they built this giant lift fixture that they affectionately called the bird cage that was 60 feet tall and fit over the crew module and the LAS, and picked that up along with the service module and the spacecraft adapter. And to be able to plan out how that would be used in the VAB was critical to have their input and their expertise early on to make sure that what we did was an intelligent way to go. They had intimate knowledge of their facilities and their organizations to know what could and couldn't work. We could design what we thought would work, but having them, the people who actually knew what it was and who would actually be doing the work, was just very worth having them there.
When Glenn Research Center knew that they were going to bring final assembly of their hardware elements to KSC to be performed at KSC, they would have benefited by having sent a front-runner team or individual to understand some of the details of how the details and requirements that we have for processing hardware here at KSC. From future projects, commercial or future NASA projects, part of the planning process needs to be to have those entities allocate time and resources to be able to do some preliminary understanding of KSC environment, which I believe local, on-site, on-the-job training almost, exposure is very, very valuable for that process. So there's value to this in the big picture of, and you say it, especially contractors. I can see the commercial enterprise that they are even further removed culturally from NASA centers that at least have some of the NASA culture for how we do and what we do.
Early on in the process, in the design process and the fabrication, we established a relationship with our Kennedy Space Center counterparts to bring them into not only reviewing our design, but establishing a process for checking out procedures, handling procedures, fueling procedures, things like that. And some of this comes through experience of the personnel that were involved as well, where we were able to implement a suggestion. I'll cite an example. Loading hypergolic tanks is a hazardous operation. You would like to do that in a benign environment where personnel are not exposed to hazards, but can actually dry run the procedure in a very relevant environment. So we took a couple of our tanks, a helium tank and a propellant tank, down to KSC, mounted on a dolly, and could actually dry run using water, and of course helium not being hazardous, but using water instead of propellants. And the operators at KSC, at the hypergolic maintenance facility, could actually load the tank using the procedures that they developed and verify all their movements and actions and readings that they were taking during that process. And we did that a year and a half before we ever went down there with the actual roll control module. And they were actually in a partial scape suit environment, if you will. They had the face mask and their scape gloves on, so they had the same tactile and visual sensations that they would have when they were in their personal protection equipment. And they could see where they had difficulty reaching valves or torquing, using torque wrenches or whatever. That was very valuable, so that when we did go down there for the final fueling, it went through very, very easily.
For ground systems, we had a tremendous success with the Ares 1X mission. Our development modifications, we were able to get in on time, and I think part of the success of that was having the operations folks involved very early on, all the way through the development phase, through the conceptual phase, through the design phase, and implementation. So having the operations folks involved in that kind of helped our designs stay on track and our implementation on track. So when they came over to go use it, it was what they expected, and ended up working for them just fine. So I think that's one of the successes of ground systems for Ares 1X.
There was what I thought, very tight integration of the personnel between the design center and the operations center. And again, the installation went without incident at all, and probably went quicker and smoother than I would have anticipated, particularly if we hadn't had a chance to dry run it then.